tengo que decir gracias sinceramente al presidente Quintaro por la oportunidad de estar aquí con ustedes por este congreso. También verdaderamente quiero decir gracias a Juliana Vallejo de Chavarría, quien ha estado excelente en preparando y ayudándome a preparar para este congreso. Como ustedes pueden oír, yo no puedo hablar español tan bien. Entonces, voy a usar a los intérpretes excelentes y profesionales que tenemos, porque aunque yo puedo decir cosas como gracias, como yo tengo una copa fea, como estoy muy feliz de estar aquí, las cosas que quiero decir sobre los humanidades, las ciencias sociales, son bastante complejas que no me confían en mis palabras españolas. Entonces, gracias por su paciencia, mientras que cambio desde intentando hablar en español to speaking in English. I have taken the liberty of translating my slides as best I'm able from English into Castellano. If there's mistakes throughout, please let me know after the talk so that I can correct them in the future. And thank you for your patience as we work through this interesting topic after lunch. As Dr. Caballero said yesterday during his presentation after lunch, that this is a difficult time to give a presentation. People are in a different place mentally, people are in a different place physically than they were during the morning, and there's a strong desire to begin to snooze and sleep. And so I do a lot of teaching with medical students at Harvard Medical School, and I like to use evidence-based teaching, and that means interactive, active teaching and learning. And so with you, after lunch, right now, I'd like to do a little bit of interactive questioning, a little bit of interactive teaching and learning, so that we can get our energy back up and start to refocus on this interesting, fascinating, and important topic of the humanities and social sciences and medical education. And so I don't have an audience response system, so we're going to have to use an old school system of raising our hands. There it is. We're practicing in the back there. And I just love the questions and hearing about what you've got in terms of perspectives and backgrounds. So this is my first time in Cartagena, my first time at Oscofane. And so I'm curious, who are you? Who is this audience who's here with us today? And I'll start with some basic questions of demographics. Do you primarily teach in the preclinical fellowship in the undergraduate medical education setting with students in the classroom or the clinical setting, or do you teach in the post-teacher work in the graduate medical education setting with interns, residents, etc.? So who will use our audience response system? Who teaches in the undergraduate medical education with medical students primarily, almost the entire room? And then who teaches in graduate medical education with interns, residents? Wow, who teaches in both? All right, good. All right, me too. So this is we're going to get along. We both teach in both settings, most of us, which is great. For my undergraduate medical education, I work in a 9-week-long course that focuses on pathophysiology, physiology, histology, anatomy, and the basic clinical components of the respiratory, cardiovascular, and hematologic systems in the classroom. And that class is actually going on right now at Harvard. I took a couple of days off to come down here. In the clinical setting with graduate medical learners, I work in the intensive care unit at Beth Israel Deaconess with interns, residents, and fellows. All right, now I'm curious, who here has a PhD or a PhD equivalent? Basic science, so less, and then who here has an MD or MBBS or DO equivalent? Okay. So more MDs and framing for me, because the content that I'm going to talk about is not location specific. Humanities, social sciences don't need to be taught in the classroom. They can be taught in the clinic, the operating room, the intensive care unit as well. And my last question for you is, who here is currently teaching medical humanities or social sciences as any component of their educational interventions?
Okay, great. So it's maybe a third of the room, maybe a little less than that. So for those of you who are teaching in the humanities, I'll be curious what your thoughts are about the evidence that I go through for the benefit of humanities education in a medical education curriculum. And then for those of you who aren't currently teaching humanities or social sciences in your various educational enterprises, I hope that some of the justification for considering that, some of the frameworks for incorporating the humanities, and some of the evidence that I'll show you will inspire you to think about integrating these concepts into how we're teaching the doctors of the future, or as we call them, our medical students. So we've got some objectives today. And specifically thinking about discussing the role of the humanities and the social sciences in a medical education curriculum is going to be a critical part of this. Identifying connections between the humanities and social sciences with concepts like self-directed learning, reflection, things that are important components of the future doctors that we want to create in medical education settings. I want to relate the humanities and social sciences with core effective attributes like empathy, curiosity, self-reflection, and compassion. I think these are necessary components of being a humanistic physician in the 21st century, and I think that the humanities and social sciences are a path towards creating physicians with those attributes and skills. I'm going to describe some specific strategies for implementing humanities into different curricula, including standalone courses where the humanities are sort of taught in parallel with basic science or clinical teaching, as well as integrative courses where the humanities and social sciences are incorporated into existing curricula. I'm going to give you two examples that we do at Harvard Medical School and two examples from the literature at large for how to incorporate the humanities into medical education curricula. The fifth objective up there is aspirational. We're not going to go through that together here in El Congreso right now, but this is for you to think about as we go through the talk and as you move on to your own teaching, design, and implementation activities. How are you going to take what we talk about here today and incorporate it into your own teaching activities going forward? We have an order of events for this, and I'm going to start by, I hope, justifying the importance of this topic, the humanities and social sciences, as well as social justice and social determinants of health in a medical education curriculum. I'm going to present it as a conceptual framework that relies heavily on those humanistic characteristics of empathy, curiosity, reflection, compassion, self-directed learning. And then we're going to pivot to the literature and the evidence that's out there in terms of specific interventions and then the data from studies of medical education interventions about the humanities and social sciences. And then finally, we'll spend the last little bit thinking about how to implement these humanistic, humanities-based social science interventions into your own teaching going forward. And I'll provide specific examples of that when we get towards the end of the talk. We're not going to cover everything today. There's a lot that's involved in and related to thinking about designing humanities curriculum and social sciences curriculum, and the effects of peer-peer or near-peer teaching in the hidden curriculum are critically important, but beyond the scope of what we have time to discuss here today. We're not going to discuss the critically important role of role models in medical education with regard to the humanities and social sciences, although mentoring and role modeling is clearly necessary, if not sufficient, to develop humanities-based social science curriculum. We're not going to talk about the optimal content for your humanities-based curriculum for your learners, right? I don't know who your learners are, and so I can't say what the right curriculum is for that group. And so that's for you to reflect on and think about as you begin to start to think about how to incorporate or build upon your humanities education for your medical learners. And then finally, we'll talk about some barriers, the biggest one being faculty, and the second biggest one being faculty, and the third biggest one being faculty followed by time.